When purchasing a Switch 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza wasn't at the top of my reasons to buy list. However, the more I read about the latest game from the Nintendo dev team behind Mario Odyssey, the more intrigued I became. Having completed the game in around 25 hours, I'm happy to report that Donkey Kong Bananza is far better than I anticipated. But does Donkey Kong Bananza live up to the perfect scores it's been receiving from questionable game news outlets? Does Donkey Kong Bananza really deserve a Game of the Year nomination? And lastly, is Donkey Kong Bananza a reason to buy a Nintendo Switch 2? Stay tuned for this brief BS-free review of Donkey Kong Bananza. Before we get going, if you end up liking anything you see in this video, a like and a subscribe gets me closer to my goal of receiving pre-launch review copies of the games to cover on this channel. When that goal is achieved, reviews will be out on release day, and like my favorite YouTube reviewer ACG, I will purchase a copy of any review game to give away to a lucky viewer on this channel. Enough pandering, let's boogie. I am Grade A. I play games. This is Grade A Game. I'm too old to get excited about Nintendo games anymore. At least that's what I thought when looking at the early previews for this super cartoony, hyper-vibrant take on Donkey Kong that was a vast deviation from the Donkey Kong Country games I played in my early teenage years. However, because I want to review potential Game of the Year nominees and because I was hearing so much early hype for this new Donkey Kong game, I decided to give it a chance, and I'm glad I did. So let's get started with this Donkey Kong Bananza review like we always do, with the presentation. Brilliant, bright, colorful, chaotic, and surprisingly detailed, the graphics in Donkey Kong Bananza do a lot to showcase just how much more horsepower the Switch 2 has over its 9-year-old predecessor. Playing the game in dock mode on either a 1440p monitor or a 4K OLED TV, Donkey Kong Bananza's visuals are far more impressive than I thought possible on Nintendo's new hybrid console. In Switch 2's handheld mode, Donkey Kong Bananza looks as good as a game can on the mediocre Switch 2 display, and it plays with the same fluidity as it does in dock mode. The art style is fun and reminiscent of a classic DK game. The character models and animations are top-notch, and the environments are very detailed and almost entirely destructible. The end result of the graphics presented in Donkey Kong Bananza is that it is a gorgeous-looking game, as long as you're going in with realistic expectations. Even the picky graphics who-are that I am, I can't really make any major complaints about the game considering the mobile hardware upon which it's played. The music in Donkey Kong Bananza is awesome, gleeful, nostalgic, effervescent. Each entry in the Donkey Kong Bananza soundtrack brings the appropriate level of joy and energy to match the aesthetic of the level and the encounter at hand. This is definitely Nintendo music, as I have no other way to articulate it, and honestly, I loved every minute of it, except for one very grating musical feature which we'll get into in our complaints section later on. The sound effects in Donkey Kong Bananza are incredible. Each surface DK walks on has a believable representation, and the sounds associated with the destruction of different materials is right on point. Voice acting really comes down to one character, and that's Pauline. While the various enemies and allies do technically speak, what we hear is a non-English semi-sim speak, leaving Pauline alone to judge, and well, she's fine. My annoyances with Pauline didn't necessarily come down to her acting, but rather the writing and her inability to let a tired 8 sleep. For f***'s sake, shut up, Pauline!
Hey, DK, you awake?
Donkey Kong Bananza is a button masher, and its primary game mechanic is stated simply with one word: destroy. The destruction is glorious. The endless entertainment and time-wasting potential of destroying the whole world just to find its secrets was incredibly appealing to my inner 8-year-old. The objective of each level is simple: find the exit and take it down to the next layer, or level, beneath. Once you find the exit, there will be a somewhat simplistic obstacle such as a void machine blocking your path or a boss encounter to deal with. With the exception of the last few hours, these encounters are quite easy, which didn't really bother me, because the joy in Donkey Kong Bananza isn't from overwhelming difficulty, but rather from the wide variety of ways players can handle a given situation. And of course, the destruction. Along the way to the next level, you'll find a variety of portals to side adventures. Some are clearly visible as you navigate the surface of each of the game's 21 levels, while others can be discovered with the sonar-emitting hand slap mechanic that can clearly show outlines of these portals deep beneath the surface. The side levels in Donkey Kong Bananza comprise of kill X number of enemies within a time limit, navigate this challenging 3D platforming sequence, or my favorite, the classic Donkey Kong Country-style 2D side-scrolling levels. These side-scrolling levels take the old Super Nintendo Donkey Kong Country formula to the next level, as we get the same destructibility and movesets as we have in the rest of the game inside of this 2D platforming sequence. One fun feature in Donkey Kong Bonanza are the aptly named Bonanza powers. These Bonanza powers turn DK into one of 5 different animals, each with their own modified moveset that allows players to deal with environmental and enemy mechanics. Each variant was fun to control, and while some were definitely way more useful than others, overall I think the Bonanza transformations add at least a little bit of a change to break up the repetition of the standard smashing. I do have some issues with the system, one of which I've already alluded to, so stay tuned for the complaints section where we'll dive into these annoyances a little deeper. The combat in Donkey Kong Bananza is entertaining, but with the exception of the last few hours, could be considered overly simplistic and repetitive. The simplicity and repetitiveness didn't really bother me, as the general chaos of enemies in the main levels always kept things feeling active enough that I didn't really notice how easy things were. When it came to the bosses, however, they were obviously too easy, until they weren't. More on that later. Finishing up with the gameplay experience, Donkey Kong Bonanza seems to offer a lot of potential game time and a lot of replayability. During the Donkey Kong Bonanza campaign, players can use currencies, found as you explore, to purchase new outfits for DK and Pauline from the vendors on each level. Most of these cosmetics provide perks to alleviate the new sources of peril introduced on the level from which they were purchased. Additionally, after completing the game, players are tasked with obtaining a certain number of crystal bananas in order to complete the endgame objective. Since completing Donkey Kong Bonanza, I've actually found a lot of late-night joy working on the endgame while playing in handheld mode from the cozy comfort of my bed. I've talked about Donkey Kong Bonanza's impressive visuals and audio presentation, praised the simple yet addictive gameplay, but this is gray day games, not bright sunny everything is awesome games, so let's talk about my Donkey Kong Bonanza complaints. Why is Nintendo allergic to DLSS? The Switch 2 is the only current-gen console capable of NVIDIA's DLSS upscaling technology, but as is the norm for Nintendo first-party games, it isn't in use in Donkey Kong Bonanza. Why? I don't know, Digital Foundry hasn't given me an answer to that yet, but I find it frustrating. I wasn't a big fan of the repeat boss battles. I mean, we literally fight one boss like 6 or 7 times. It's not as bad as it sounds, but it ends up being very frustrating. Shooting 2 complaint birds with 1 bitchy bullet, let's discuss the Bonanza transformations. Remember how I said I really love the music? Except, well, every time players transform into one of the up to 5 different animals, they get subjected to the same song sung on a loop until the end of the transformation time window. This was okay for the first 4, 5, 10 hours. Then, it was not. Mind you, I didn't hate the music that Pauline belted from 8-pack, but man, you're in that Bonanza state a lot. Another complaint about the Bonanza system is that there are simply too many of them, which is why I ended up beating Donkey Kong Bonanza without obtaining all of them. The truth is, at one point of the game, during a very appropriately named level, you have a choice of paths. I must have missed the helpful tip, or it didn't exist, that let me know that yeah, go ahead and fast travel back to this level so you can get all of the tools in the game. It was only in the last 3 or 4 hours of gameplay that I was even made aware that the zebra form existed. At that point, I had forgotten all about the divide level and the branching paths, so I solved my problem other ways. So, thumbs up for giving me the agency to solve the problem on my own, 2 thumbs down for letting me finish the game, missing 20% of the total tools needed to actually complete the game. My penultimate perturbance is the sudden difficulty spike. I was literally one and doneing every boss throughout the game until a certain point when the developers decided that they want a boss fight to be 3 phases and to take 25 minutes. Oh, and no checkpoints. I actually see a lot of younger players putting the game down before they actually get a chance to beat it, unless they grind the hell out of side missions in order to simply overpower and over-equip themselves out of the challenge presented in the last 4 or 5 hours of the game. My last complaint is more warning than whining. Donkey Kong Bonanza is best played in bite-sized chunks. Play it until you aren't feeling it, put it down, play something else. When you go back to DK, you'll find yourself just as happy as you did the previous session. No lifing Donkey Kong Bonanza in the way that I did to get a review out around a week after launch really exacerbated things I found less than likable about the game. Multiple times I thought, man, I wish I had a few weeks to play this game so I could actually enjoy it. But that's all the more motivation for me to keep growing the game reviews on this channel, so hopefully one day I can actually play a game and savor it. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a great game that reminds me of my best memories of playing Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 games back when I was a much younger, much dumber man. It is a game that would be the perfect app for the on-the-go gamer who uses their Switch 2 on daily commutes, after school, or winding down for a night in bed. It is a game best enjoyed in bites. If this sounds appealing to you, oh god damn it, then I absolutely think Donkey Kong Bonanza is reason enough to purchase a Switch 2. As to whether or not Donkey Kong Bonanza deserves a Game of the Year nod, if we consider the Game Awards 6 slots for Game of the Year nominees, I think it's going to be tough, but this has a chance. That being said, I don't feel that it stands a chance of winning Game of the Year, simply because of the quality of the competition and because I don't see two E for Everyone games winning back-to-back Game of the Year. Lastly, do I think Donkey Kong Bonanza deserves the perfect scores outlets like IGN are dishing out to it? Well, Donkey Kong Bonanza is a great, but far from perfect game, which leads me to give it a very solid 8.75 out of 10. If you made it this far, give yourself a pat on the back. Since you're already moving that arm, just go reach down and click that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Doing so helps me appear worthy to publishers, review codes for me means game giveaways for you. It's that simple. Don't forget to check out The Odd Gamers at theoddgamers.com. The Odd Gamers is a content creator group I co-founded that features a bunch of interesting streamers and creators who play a variety of games. So go to the site, check out the links, and join the Discord. We're always looking for creators of all levels, so come say hi. Most of us don't bite. Once again, I thank you for your time. Good luck and good gaming.
I am Grade A. I play games. This is